Almost everybody nowadays is overqualified. You see, we put the thinking mind above everything else on a big, beautiful, shiny, golden pedestal. We put it above everything, above experience, above absolutely everything. Experience, proof, all these things are so much more important than our thinking mind, our understanding, our logical part of our mind. And yet society and everyone else puts it so high on a pedestal. You don't have to do that because you understand everything and you are overqualified, and yet you cannot have the outcomes that you want. That's because you don't put experience first, experience and proof. Once you put experience and proof first, you understand that it doesn't have to make sense for it to work. If it works, you don't have to understand it. You can understand it afterwards if you want, but as long as it works, you don't really need to understand it. Because I do not understand how this microphone sends signal to that camera. I do not understand how my router works. I do not understand all of these things, and yet I use them in my processes. I use them. If they break, I can just buy new ones. I don't really have to understand them because I'm probably not gonna need to fix them. So experience is what matters more than anything. If you think that your problem is the lack of knowledge, if you think your problem is the experience that you have, if you think that you lack the perfect plan or the perfect strategy or the perfect ideas, you are wrong. There is one singular thing that separates you from the person you are and the person you want to become. And that thing is experience. Copious amounts of experience. You have to understand that the more experience you gather, good and bad, the better your outcomes. You get incredible outcomes. You will be in such a better situation because let me describe the situation you are in right now. You are overqualified in terms of your mind. You know so many things, and yet you do not know how to apply it. You know how they work, and yet you do not understand how to apply it. Or even worse, you've tried them, you know that they work for others, but they don't work for you. You do not understand why. And you think that by understanding why, because it makes sense, it might work for you. No, understand that you only need more experience, and that experience will get you to a certain point, to the point where you have disproportional results, because so many people in the world focus on knowledge and understanding and ideas and mindset and all of these bullshit things as opposed to experience. You have to understand that the more experience you have, the more disproportional outcomes you will have. Because experience compounds. Thinking doesn't really compound because it is not put in action. It's so amazing to see people have 20-step plans, 30-step plans, when usually all that you have to do is gain so much experience in one-step plans, two-step plans, three-step plans is actually too much. Understand that the simpler the plan, the easier it is to gain experience in that domain. You have to understand that once you put experience above everything else, you will have incredible results. Sometimes incredibly good, sometimes incredibly bad results. But you will not feel bad even about the incredibly shitty results because you understand that you gain experience by doing those things. Everybody lives here 99.9% of their time in their head. Try to understand that experience, to actually have great experience and copious amounts of experience, you have to overwhelm your mind with experiences, with data, to actually make it process all of the data and all of the things that you've done, and to really bubble up to the surface the principles And those things will just come up to the surface after you've done extremely interesting and very diverse things over and over and over again. After you've done that, the principles just come up out of nowhere. You will start to understand more and more about the subject, not by really thinking about it, not by really focusing on the logical part, but by focusing on the doing part. First, principles don't come from understanding. They come from doing. The more you do, the easier it is to discover those principles. Don't try to understand them. Don't try to apply them before you have the experience. Make the mistakes. Do all of these things. Sure, knowledge is great for keeping you out of danger, but most of the things that we do have no real bad consequence. Understand that if you have a modicum of logic, just the tiniest sliver of logic, you can understand this concept that most of the things that we do have no real bad consequences. They only have good consequences. The things that we do rarely have any bad consequences. That's the problem, because we live here and we don't end up doing anything. We don't understand that the world is such a beautiful place and such a safe place to just do things, to have experiences. Understand that when you put your mind on a pedestal, you will always be limited by the things that make sense. You will try to first understand if it makes sense. Because if it doesn't make sense, you're not going to try it. That's the limit of your mind. The limit of your mind is limiting you just to logic, just to understanding. Understand that a lot of the things will not make sense for a long time until they do. That's what happens when you put experience first. If you think that it has to make sense for it to work, you are wrong. It doesn't have to make sense to your current reality or perspective. It will make sense once you gain the knowledge and you gain the understanding, but it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to understand it. It doesn't have to really be proven right, as long as it works. As long as it works, but you will never get there. You will never have things that you do that don't make sense, but you do them anyway because they give you a certain result. That's such a better place to be than really understanding everything, but not having anything work because you understand too much. Because all of your understanding and all of your thinking is based on information and knowledge and logic, as opposed to real life experience and proof that it works for you. As long as it doesn't work for you, it doesn't matter. As long as it is not put into action and proven to be right in your own experience, it doesn't matter if it makes sense. If it doesn't work for you, it's not really good. It has to work for you. And the only way you can find that, it's by doing more, by having more experiences, no matter what you do. More experience is almost always better than less experience. Well, I'm gonna say a bold thing. Always. More experience is always better. You have to really get down that small little idea into your brain, into your big fat brain. You have to really put that idea that experience is so much better than information, knowledge, and understanding, and all of these things. It is all about experience, but we spend so much time over here. It's boring, it's depressing us, it's detaching us from the real world because we spend so much time here as opposed to having experiences and really testing things out. There are no real bad outcomes in the society that we live in. Of course, use a little bit of logic to stay out of danger. But most people live boring, uninteresting lives because they spend 99% of their time over here. And they have mediocre results because they spend all their time living up here, as opposed to gaining more experience, as opposed to doing more, just making more things, good things, bad things, whatever it is, just doing more is always better because it gains you more experience.